People who had someone condescendingly explain something that they didn't know you're an expert on. What happened? One of my ex's party where most people had a boring IT job, including me. People in those parties had this tendency to showcase how insanely cool their life was. This guy, long hair, beard, tattoo, in particular decided to have an argument with me and started telling me that my taste in music sucks and that I should start listening to some of the non-mainstream stuff. When I asked him to name a few artists, he mentioned a few names. I told him to look up the guitar player for one of those bands he mentioned, which was me. It felt good. He looked at me in disbelief and thought I was messing with him. Didn't believe when my ex tried telling him and responded by saying, "I am not that drunk yet." It could be because I had completely changed my appearance. Cut my hair short, clean shaved. Everybody around was finding the whole thing entertaining. He looked me up on Facebook and after that he was convinced. Gave a hug, took a picture with me before leaving. Showed up to one of our concerts after that. I gave him free drink coupons. When I was pregnant, I was drinking a decaf iced latte. I had some woman in line at the pharmacy tell me the caffeine was going to rearrange the genes in my baby's brain. I'm a geneticist. I actually couldn't even come up with a response. I just stood there somewhat dumbfounded at the absurdity of it all. As a geneticist, I'm fascinated to learn what your mother did to rearrange the genes in your head, because that's the dumbest shit I've ever fucking heard. Arguing with someone who is smart is difficult. Arguing with an idiot is impossible. I wasn't granted access to some servers at work because they were mission critical and only a few people had access to them. I needed access for the work I was doing, and getting other people to do it for me took forever. After 6 months of my boss talking to their boss and political back and forth, it was agreed that I'm going to be granted limited access to specific things on the server. But it was made clear they didn't think I knew enough about the subject to be doing this. So they provided documentation for the correct way these things were supposed to be done. I laughed when I saw it and asked my boss to check the author. I had written those instructions a few years earlier, and they had become the official documentation for how to do it. Had a similar experience. I had laid out a paint schedule and the product used for my brother-in-law's home. I showed up on the job site and found that they were not following my instructions. I told them to stop. That's when I had a grizzly old painter get in my face demanding who the hell did I think I was. I reached down and picked up a gallon of paint and said, "Do you see this gallon of paint?" And when he replied yes, I flipped the gallon around and asked him if he could see the directions on the back of the can. When he replied yes, I said, "I wrote them. That's who the hell I am." The painter looked at my brother-in-law, who nodded agreement, and said oh, and went back up his ladder. I was the technical writer for the paint company at the time. After 5 years of being the one usually in charge of making dinner, my husband told me that if I added butter and a bit of milk to the boiled potatoes, I could make mashed potatoes. Where do you think the mashed potatoes you've been eating monthly for the last 5 years came from? Yeah, sure, that's cool and all. But did you know that if you put your dirty laundry in that metal chute by the washroom, by the end of the week it magically returns to your closet, clean and folded? Had a cashier get snotty with me when I told him he needed to hit F5 to get back from the credit card screen. He went into a several-minute tirade about how he had been using the software for years and that's not how it worked, then explained something about computers, then on a tangent about how they log his key presses, then something about the servers upstairs and how they're connected to the cloud. I finally had to interrupt him with, "Dude, I helped write this software, nothing you said it's right." He then stormed off from the register, and I just stood there awkward till a manager showed up and pressed F5. People explain medical things to me on a fairly regular basis. Unless they're being a total dick, I kind of gently let them know I'm a doctor and re-explain what they said back to them in the right way. Also a doctor, the truly bizarre one is when patients try to explain medicine to you while you're treating them. Literally was at a code for a patient who was explaining to me that the key to not getting cancer was her list of natural herbs and remedies. She was in hospital for cancer. I've been in martial arts, Taekwondo, specifically, for 14 years, and I'm a 4th degree black belt. I don't claim to know everything, not even close, but I do know what I'm talking about. At my university, I decided to try out the Taekwondo club on campus. It was the first day I was trying it, and I didn't know if we were supposed to wear uniforms or not, so I went in with workout clothes but brought my full gear just in case. Before the class started, one of the leaders, who was wearing a second-degree black belt, nothing to sniff at, but still a difference of 5 years of training, came up to me and started explaining the general protocol of class and offered to stand next to me during the class to show me how to do the different steps. Throughout all of this, he seemed annoyed that he was having to explain everything, and generally like he didn't want new, inexperienced students. I politely agreed, and asked if we should wear our uniforms for the class. He explained that if we had them we should, but it wasn't a problem if I didn't have one. I explained that I did have one, and said I'd be right back, then proceeded to go change into my uniform. His eyes nearly popped out of his head when he saw me walk out with my instructor's uniform and 4th-degree belt. All the time on Reddit, people like to try and explain legal matters to me despite the fact I'm a lawyer. I was picked up by an old taxi driver on my way to a skate park with my skateboard. He rudely demanded to know where I had been skateboarding. Nowhere yet. I was on my way to the park. He informed me that if I collided with someone his age on the sidewalk, they had an 80% chance of dying from a brain hemorrhage. I politely informed him that this was unlikely and that I hadn't been skating on the sidewalk. He then told me to ask anyone in the medical profession, and they will confirm it. I then politely informed him that I'm an ER doctor, and he changed his manner with me completely, and became very respectful and interested once he realized I wasn't just some skater punk. Not my story, but we had a few lectures at university given by the head of cardiology at the adjacent hospital. He told us about the time he was waiting to cross the road when a man next to him collapsed. As he knelt down to attend to him, a large lady strode over, physically lifted him, cardiologist, not a large man, out of her way and said in a loud voice, "I'll take charge, I have a first aid certificate." Someone on Reddit 2 days ago telling me how insurance companies work and how I am spreading fake news. I was sitting at Midwest HQ of one of the largest insurance companies in the USA meeting with their underwriters 2 hours prior. A flat earther tried to pull the, "So you think it was easier to get to the moon than fake the footage?" As a professional VFX artist that knows very much about visual manipulation technology of the past and present. "In my professional opinion, yes." Friend's brother wanted to install new speakers in his car. Amplifier is rated for 4 ohms, so there was no possible way to use these two 8-ohm speakers because it would blow up the amplifier. His dad joined in and argued with me too. Neither would listen to a word I said until I mentioned that I'm 5 years into an electrical engineering degree, have designed and built a handful of amplifiers, and designed and built a dozen guitar speaker cabinets. Their tone totally changed after that, haha. Don't know if he ever installed them though. I'm a young woman who has been playing Dungeons & Dragons and similar role-playing games since I was a child. Almost 2 decades now. I've played almost every week in some way or another for the last 10-ish years. I actually have a side job writing system-agnostic content for tabletop RPGs. Almost every time I encounter a new group or talk about my interest in a public setting, say a party or something, some dude has to come out of the woodwork and try to explain to me how the game works. I've become very good at casually mentioning how long I've been playing. Usually that gets the hint across, but some still keep right on going. When the rotted P-trap under my sink broke, my boyfriend said, "Remind me to take a look at that." I asked, "Why?" He said, "So I can tell you what parts to buy." I thanked him and reminded him that I'd installed all the plumbing at my mother's house. He knew that, but I guess he'd forgotten. Was being discharged from a week-long hospital stay, GI. And even though I was ready to go home, I was still having some bouts of nausea, had been getting Zofran while inpatient, and asked the nurse if the discharging provider could send in a script for a few doses. In a sweet, sickly voice, she said, "Oh honey, Zofran only comes in 4 form." I replied with, "Oh honey, I'm a pharmacist, and can assure you it also comes in tablets, liquid, and oral disintegrating tabs." She fumbled a bit, then mumbled something about checking with the doctor, and quickly exited the room. I may not have perfectly mimicked her condescending tone, but I sure as hell tried. Do you have a similar story? Leave a comment, and subscribe to the channel if you want to see more videos like this one.